Suffolk detectives are tonight hunting two attackers who stabbed a man at his home in the middle of the night. The pair fled after the initial attack, but then returned to the house in Ipswich and assaulted the man a second time. He was eventually found by a neighbour outside, covered in blood.
This was the scene of the attack at Bitton Close in Ipswich. Police received a call just before 2 o'clock this morning saying that the man, who's 55 years old, had been stabbed. He was in bed when the raiders struck. They got in through a window.
The victims told police that both these men had their faces partially covered with scarves. Once inside the property, they attacked him. They then left. It's thought they may have assaulted someone else out here on the street. They then returned to the property once more and set about the man for a second time. Once they'd gone, he managed to get help from a neighbour.
He was found outside the property covered in blood. He was taken to Ipswich Hospital, suffering stab wounds to the body and cuts to his head. Police said that by late this morning his condition was improving and he's been able to tell them more about what happened.
We're particularly looking to find two males, described as being in their early teens, early 20s. One of a slim build, about 6 foot tall. Second male a little bit more stockier than that. Should anybody have been in the area during that time of night, saw these two people acting suspiciously in the area, we, Suffolk Police, would be very grateful for a call.
This afternoon, as the rain moved in, so too did a forensics team, looking for clues at the property to try to help find out who was responsible for what police say was a nasty attack. They're also still trying to establish the motive. Kevin Birch, BBC Look East, in Ipswich.
Members of Britain's biggest ever cannabis smuggling ring, who used the port of Harwich, were jailed today. They imported £62 million worth of the drug into the UK from the Netherlands, hiding it among boxes of flowers. Southwark Crown Court heard that one shipment contained more than £250,000 worth of skunk cannabis. 3 hospitals in the region have been identified as having higher than expected death rates. Basildon and Thurrock, Colchester and the James Paget Hospital in Galston were named by a leading health expert in an investigation broadcast tonight on Radio 4's The Report programme.
The Armed Forces Minister faced hostile questions in Essex this afternoon as he tried to encourage people to support the war in Afghanistan. Bill Rammell is currently on a nationwide tour to try to explain what the British mission is all about.
The Minister of Defence, you have blood on your hands. The Afghani civilians are dying. British soldiers, every evening you turn on the news and what do you see? British soldiers are dying.
It was only a handful of people, and most were students from the Stop the War coalition. But it's a reminder that not everyone in the country agrees with the British mission in Afghanistan.
How many more men have to die and how many thousands of men are going to suffer?
How can you claim that this isn't a war on Islam?
Which is why the Armed Forces Minister has taken it upon himself to tour the country and address public meetings like this one.
Are you worried that you could be losing the argument?
Look, I think if you look at the evidence, support for the mission goes up and down, driven in part by what's happening, whether there's been a particular number of fatalities. Notwithstanding all of that, my strong view is there's an underlying majority support for our mission in Afghanistan, but I want it to be greater.
The government says 3/4 of terrorist plots originate from the Afghan-Pakistan border. That, it argues, is why it's so important to defeat the Taliban through fighting and through winning hearts and minds. Which is why down the road at the Colchester garrison, members of 16 Air Assault Brigade are learning to speak Pashto as they prepare for their 4th deployment to Afghanistan. Mr Rammell wants these soldiers to have as much public support as possible. Most of those in his audience today already had fixed views. He probably didn't change anyone's minds. But the minister still believes it's important to argue the case for Afghanistan. Andrew Sinclair, BBC Look East in Essex.
Norwich City manager Paul Lambert is among the bookies' favourites to become the new Celtic manager. Lambert has enjoyed a stunning season at Carrow Road, and the speculation follows the departure of Tony Mowbray from the manager's position at Parkhead. Former Norwich boss Peter Grant has also left the club.
Protesters in Colchester who've complained about noise and pollution ever since a new road was built 7 years ago can finally expect to get some compensation. The Northern Approach Road was built in 2003. Today, the County Council finally confirmed it would pay compensation.
Drivers who rely on the Northern Approach Road in Colchester probably can't imagine life without it, but the people whose homes back onto the road are not quite so keen.
We used to look out on lovely grassy area, very quiet, very tranquil, just hear the trees and the bird songs, things like that. Now we hear noise, traffic noise constantly, we have light pollution, we have air pollution, and it has affected our lives considerably.
The road was finished in 2003. After that, dozens of families, like Julia's, were led to believe they'd each get between £5,000 and £20,000 from Essex County Council. We understand the council had an agreement with Cofton Homes, the developer who built this road, that the company would provide the pot of compensation money. But last year, Cofton went into administration before any of the residents had received a single penny. A group of 30 of them recently began legal action against Essex County Council. After their story was featured on Look East and BBC Essex this morning, the council announced that it would finally pay up.
The amount is around $850,000 in total to date, and there are approximately 100 individual properties involved. There was a bond involved, and we've been dealing with both the receiver and the bondholder, and it's all taken rather a long time.
So after a 7-year wait, it looks as though Julia and her neighbours will finally get their money. Ben Bland, BBC Look East, Colchester.
You're watching Look East from the BBC.
And left fuming after a holidaymaker parked their car on their driveway near the airport and jetted off, leaving them blocked in.
It's highlighted once again the problem of so-called fly parking around Stansted Airport. Felicity Simper is in the village of Takeley. Felicity.
Yes, Susie, well, welcome to Takeley. Behind me is the home of Tony and Jason Roberts. Lovely rural area to live in, and about a mile over in that direction you've got Stansted Airport. This is Jason's Jeep, and over here we've got Tony's car, and poor old Tony's having to park it on this boggy, muddy grass, which is a bit of a nuisance when she's got a large family. You can imagine what a pain it is trying to get children in and out of the car in that state. And all the problems are being caused by this. It's a red Honda Civic, and it appeared on their driveway earlier on in the week randomly, and they suddenly discovered it was here, and it appears that the owners have just gone off on holiday. Well, we'll be meeting Tony and Jason and having a chat with them in a minute, because you can imagine they're pretty hacked off about it, as it looks like the owners just left it here while they've gone off on a jolly holiday. Tony Roberts and her husband live a stone's throw away from Stansted Airport. They have 5 children, 2 cars, and expect to be able to park outside their own house. But on Tuesday, they discovered a holidaymaker had made their own parking arrangements and abandoned their car slap bang in the middle of their drive. Fly parking in Takeley is an ongoing problem. The council introduced parking restrictions in 2006, but people are still doing it.
Being a postman in the local area, I see a great deal of this, you know, and people do get really fed up because they can't even park their own car outside their own drive or outside their own homes.
Stansted Airport say they are aware of the problem and work closely with the local council to help tackle the issue. Well, that's what Stansted Airport say. Uttlesford District Council have told us that they can't do anything about it. They say that technically it's not an abandoned car because it hasn't been sitting there long enough and it's not damaged. Well, let's have a chat with Tony and Jason now. Tony, what kind of problems is this causing you?
It's causing massive problems to us, really, because obviously this is where I would normally park my car, and loading the children in and out on the grass, which is getting muddier by the day with the rain, is really inconvenient with car chairs, push chairs. It's ever so slippery. Obviously closer to the road for the children to go.
And what have the police said?
The police have said that it's not illegally parked, so there really isn't much they can do about it. We're not allowed to block it in overnight, because otherwise they'll be waking us up to move our car.
And Jason, very quickly, can you move it?
Well, I've been told by the police I'm allowed to move it, but if I cause any damage to it, I'm liable for the expense and the damage caused to the vehicle.
So really their hands are tied. There's not a lot they can do about it. And over here you can see Jason's put some rather lovely polite notices, shall we say, on the windscreen, hoping that this won't happen again. But they're quite hard to get off. So when the owner does come back to collect their car, they're not going to be able to make a quick getaway. Back to you.
Felicity, thank you very much. Extraordinary story.
I think my notes would be far